In other news, France has unveiled controversial plans to overhaul its pension system. It comes after 18 months of consultations with unions and employers. Reforming the French retirement scheme, which faces major deficits, was a campaign promise of President Emmanuel Macron. Our business editor, Stephen Carroll, is here with more. Stephen, firstly, take us through what the current system is and why the president wanted to change it.
Essentially, it's very complicated. There are currently 42 separate regimes under the public pension system in France, all with different rules. And unlike other countries, most people in France just have their public pension. They don't have a private pension as well. So this is a very important issue for an awful lot of people in this country. Everyone under the current system gets a different amount of pension depending on what your salary was when you were working and how long you worked for. So just one example, in the private sector at the moment, employees' pensions are calculated on their 25 best years of earnings. In the public sector, it's their best 6 months of earnings. The legal retirement age is 62 in France. It was really controversial when they increased that from 60 to 62. But you have to get your full pension at that age. You have to have been paying into the system for 41 and a half years, which most people, of course, haven't by the age of 62. The result is the retirement age has been creeping up already. It's currently on average about 63, but as high as 67 for some people as well. The other big problem here is that there's a deficit in the system. There isn't enough money for it to finance itself, and a report published in January said that deficit was set to continue until 2042. So that's one of the big impetuses in these changes.
So what's in the new plan?
The big change is that it will be much simpler. Gone are the 42 systems, and now we'll be down to just one universal pension scheme. It's going to have a points-based system in which every euro paid in would give equal rights to every worker, no matter where you work. That will be a big improvement for independent workers and for self-employed people, but it's not entirely clear how that's going to affect public sector workers who may end up not having the same entitlements they had before. The legal requirement age will stay at 62. People will be legally entitled to retire at that age, but this plan introduces what it calls an equilibrium retirement age of 64. So if you retire at 64, you get your full pension, but you can retire earlier. You won't get as much money though. That age could increase also if people's life expectancy increases, which is also part of the aim behind these reforms. Other changes in the new system would be that the minimum amount of a pension would be set at 85% of the minimum wage. That's a big increase from the moment where it's under 50% of the minimum wage. There'll also be things like a bonus for women that have children. They'll get 5% extra on their contributions from the first child to account for the time that they spent out of the workforce.
So what happens next?
Well, this is just a report. These developments now need to be considered by the relevant departments. There's expected to be a bill going to Cabinet by the end of the year in France and to Parliament by next year. The idea is this new system would be in place from 2025, so people born in 1963 will be the first ones who would deal with this new system if we stick to that timetable. We can expect that there will be opposition to some points of this reform, particularly around those changes for public sector workers. Lots of people here in France talk about 1993, which is when the last big changes to the public pension system was. That provoked widespread protests, and there would be fears of perhaps a similar thing happening again.